Welcome to Industry on Blast, the podcast that takes you on a thrilling journey into the hidden depths of secrets, deception, and untold stories. Hosted by Dr. Marlene Carson, a fearless advocate and survivor, this show is your gateway to the shocking truths and captivating narratives that lie beneath the surface. Get ready to unveil the secrets of the industry and hear from special guests who have experienced it firsthand. This is Industry on Blast.
Welcome this evening, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Legacy of Lives here on Industry on Blast. I am your host, Dr. Marlene Carson, and I'm here with the fabulous four tonight in the persons of Lisa Gray, I want to say your real name, Tibby Porter, we call her Tibby, and Danielle Smith, and Charlotte Williams. How's everybody doing tonight?
Amazing.
Doing great.
Awesome. Wow. So this is our third week talking about the legacy of lies. In this third week, we've already, prior to the third week, rather, we talked about the hidden secrets and the things that families kind of set up this legacy of lies. I don't know if it's intentional or if it's something that they don't even realize that they're doing, but we have exposed how those legacy of lies has continued. And in our last episode, we talked about Tibby's book, Broken Pieces. And in that book, it revealed more lies and some of the things that children do, not telling, and how we need to create safe spaces for telling. I read an article today. Let me pull it up here. I read this article today that literally just made me sick. It says 7 Texas men filmed themselves gang raping toddlers in the bathroom of the Houston Galleria Mall, where the ringleader worked. That's the hotel we stayed in, Charlotte.
Oh my God.
That hotel. Yeah. And the person who actually posted it said, as a society, it's time we stop tolerating this and making public examples of people who mess with these kids. He didn't say mess with them kids either. People need to understand that what happens when you think of this kind of stuff, regardless of race, gender, religion, customs, regardless of anything except zero exception, zero mercy, hold them 100% accountable. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that's kind of what we have concluded in our last couple of weeks is it's time to hold people accountable. Mm-hmm. What do you ladies think about that?
It definitely is. I saw that article as well.
Oh my God.
I saw it, the video that they were playing with it. And I'm just like, this is insane. It's like, what do you see in a child? You know, you think about what you like, right? Your taste that you like and, you know, and your mate. And, you know, tall, dark, handsome, you know, whatever the case may be. How do you look at a child and get aroused, you know, is the question, you know, and so it makes me sad for that person, you know, because you haven't developed enough to want to be with an adult. You know, all these feelings go through my head because I think about the times when I was a teenager and older men were looking at me. And, you know, I could think back on those times and I thought it was cute and, you know, I didn't know any better. But then my daughter, who's 21, when she was underage, I'm like, she looked like a baby, you know, and not just because she was my baby, but I really felt she looked like a baby, you know, still. And it's like, so for me, basically, I feel sorry for them. Like there's this thing that just captures my heart. Like, you know, I think about the victims, of course, and everything. But to that person, why didn't you develop enough to like adults?
Anybody else?
I just think it makes us have to look at a cold reality of the world that we live in today. And
Okay.
as much as it pains us to hear about this kind of stuff, to see it constantly on TV and reading about it on the social media, the fact of the matter is we have to figure out how to keep our children safe. And the only way that we can do prevention is through education. And so
Yes.
happy
Yes.
about this platform because it actually gives us an opportunity for people to listen to different opinions and understand and learn, be educated on what red flags are. Because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
these things are happening because people don't know what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
They're not expecting to have to be on guard like that all the time where children are concerned. But the fact of the matter is, we better be
We better be.
time.
Period.
And so we cannot never let our guards down when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to children, because as soon as you do that, something's going to happen. I mean, there isn't a day that I, wake up and I don't hear something now about
Right.
inappropriateness with
Right. True.
sex. It's every single day. It's
True.
from the ceiling to the basement. It's from the government. It's the industry. It's
True.
everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
so the fact of the matter is we can no longer ignore this as bad and as horrendous as it appeared, and it is. It is. But
Mm-hmm.
but the reality is, if we don't do something to change it, our kids are not going to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And me coming from the situation I went through, safety means everything to me.
Wow.
It means
Everything.
everything
Yeah.
to me.
I
I
get it.
mean, it's in friendships, it's in relationships, it's in family. It's, and uh I'm probably a little outlandish, maybe to some people would feel, think that maybe I'm a little far fetched in my thinking
No, you're not.
process, but
Mm-hmm.
I promise you I'm not, because
Mm-mm.
the feeling of being unsafe is the worst thing that you can feel.
Yeah.
To not feel safe, to not feel protected, to not feel looked over. So this is a big deal, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that we are able to talk about it and share and express views so that we can be helpful to the public.
You know, one thing I think is our greatest challenge is that we are trying to get some that have a perverted mind. We want them to understand what they're doing to children and to people. And then on the other side of it, I remember when I was in the life and people would try to understand prostitution or exploitation. And I can tell you, unless you're a trained psychologist, therapist, counselor, you can't wrap your mind around why a woman want to be with a pimp.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
You can't wrap your mind around it. So when I read this article, there was no way, and I can't even wrap my mind. You want to have sex with a baby? I can't wrap my mind around that. I know many, many, many victims of childhood sexual abuse. I cannot wrap my mind around why would 7 men, grown men, want to mess with a toddler? Something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Something wrong with you for real. Mm-hmm. And I really think that, I'm glad they were arrested, whatnot, but what did you do to that kid? Or those children? What did you do to the parents? And where was the parents? These are toddlers. We're not talking teenagers. We're talking toddlers. Who did you leave your kid with? I mean, I got so
Okay.
many questions about that. It's yeah, that's real deep. That's real deep to me. But tonight, as I was going through Danielle's book, I couldn't help but to think about the foundation of child abuse. Like, how does this start? I know it starts in the mind of people. What's planted in your mind? I thought, I'm a Christian, and I thought about the scripture. Who bewitched you?
Mm.
What happened to you? And when Jesus as Peter, when did Satan enter your heart?
Mm.
Because how can you possibly do some of the things you're doing? So tonight we're going to hear from Danielle. You ladies have not heard about her story. So Danielle, you ready to walk us through this book?
Let's walk.
All right, let's walk. So Yesterday's Tomorrow by Danielle Seck. Let's go for it.
Okay. So that is my pen name for my first book, Danielle Seck. That actually was my married name. And, I'm divorced now. So that was a journey. But anywho, the book, Yesterday's Tomorrow, on the cover, tomorrow is looking at yesterday. Yesterday is looking at tomorrow. And that was important for me because I wanted to take this journey of looking at child abuse from the adult eyes.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the adult eyes. We look at, what we went through. I always say, you can always tell your future by your past, and we can also change our future by our past, by knowing our past. Sorry. So I'm 3 and 4 years old, living with my mother. I was verbally and emotionally abused by my mother, physically later. And the bulk of the story starts out with me being with my mom and her boyfriend at the time. It's winter time. Now, Columbus, Ohio winter is the thick of winter. We lived on Franklin Park West. And I was taking the dog out. And it was my duty to take him out. Once again, I'm 4 years old. And I had to take him out in the alley. So we lived at Franklin Park West and Fairwood. And so I'm getting ready to take him out. And my mom's boyfriend tells me, I better not come back into the house until he uses the bathroom. I was out there forever. When I came back inside, he had not used the bathroom. But I came back inside because I was literally frozen.
Wow.
And my mom.
I'm so sorry. I got to bring it back up. Hold on.
My mom had to call the ambulance to then get my fingers back because they were blue.
Wow.
And so that was a form of punishment because I was told not to come back into the house.
Wow.
Or there will be repercussions. I took it upon myself to come back in anyways. And yes, there were repercussions that I had, not only because my fingers were blue, but yes, I received punishment that night. One of the punishments that I would get was I would have to, at nighttime, I would stand at the foot of their bed. And I had Pepsi bottles. Ooh, who remembers those? Pepsi bottles.
Yeah, I love Pepsi, so I remember.
Listen, that was our choice of drink. And so they were filled with water. And I had to hold my hands all the way out, east and west. And I could not drop any water. And I would stand there at the foot of their bed and while they slept. And if any water was on the floor, that was a beating.
Wow.
Other things is I had to walk to my babysitters. My babysitter lived on Freebus and Fairwood, kind of like in the neighborhoods behind Freebus and Fairwood. That's from Franklin Park West and Fairwood to Freebus and Fairwood. That's roughly about 9 miles. And at 4 years old, I walked to my own babysitter's house.
At 4 years old?
At 4 years old.
Yes.
Jesus.
And,
oh my God,
walking that path, I saw so many types of people, there would be, strangers out on the streets from, their night escapade or they lived out there. And I recall one time a lady screaming out to me one time and she was like, girl, what you doing out here? And she scared me, and I'm like, I gotta go. And she was like, no, what are you doing out here? I see you every morning. Why are you out here?
My God.
And I ran to my babysitters and this was actually at Freebus and Fairwood. There used to be a bar right there on the corner. And I just ran, I finished getting to her house And now when I think about that as an adult, she had some concern for me, and my
Right.
mom didn't.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back. How did I know where my babysitter lived? My mom taught me the path. We drove the path. My mom one day, hey, you gonna start walking to your babysitter's house. Did my mom have a job at this time? No, ma'am. She did not. She was in the bed.
Wow.
And she got up and she said, "You're gonna start going to your babysitter's house by yourself."
Wow.
And she got me up in the morning. We drove it. The next morning, I believe it was the next morning or 2 days later, something like that. We walked it together. And then after that, I was on my own. And I walked this path for a while. One morning, my dad's friend, who was a school bus driver, she saw me. And I recognized her. She was like, "Danny, what are you doing out here?" And I was like, "Oh my God." Like, now my mom showed me this, right? I walked this path and everything with my mom. My mom taught me how to do this. So I must be doing the right thing.
But you're 4.
I'm 4. So I'm doing what my mother told me to do. But at the same time, when my dad's friend screamed out to me, I knew I was doing wrong. And that balance, for a 4-year-old trying to figure out I'm doing right because my mom taught me this, but at the same time, I kind of know I'm doing wrong. Well, she told my dad, who then told my stepmom. My stepmom started watching me go, and that built their case for me then to be taken out of the home. I was removed from my mother's home when I was 4. We went through, custody and everything, visitation. I had a relationship with my father, meaning I saw him every other weekend. So I stayed with them until he did receive full custody of me. With my dad, it was then emotional abuse. It was better than where I was, though. So I never complained. My hair was done every single day. I had new clothes on. I had a meal every day because part of my punishment also with my mother was I didn't get to eat every day. And I expressed that, I think, in our first show, how, teachers ended up being how teachers, saved me. And I didn't realize that until 2014, that I always stayed at school. I hated going home. And I would stay literally until she would kick me out. My teacher would kick me out of the school. But I would stay and I would help her clean up. And I start remembering as an adult, that she was leaving food out, but there was never food out before.
Yeah.
And
hey, I gotta take you back in this story because I got questions. I got questions.
Okay.
So your mother still with us?
Yes.
Okay. What's
My
your
mother
relationship?
actually took me last week.
Okay. I was going to ask you, what's your relationship now?
So we speak via text. I don't want to say it's horrible. It's not where it used to be. So we do check on one another every now and then. I expressed to the ladies I had surgery last week, and my mom took me. That was a blessing. I was shocked. I mean, I can be honest. I told her, myself. So we speak to each other in that manner. We don't speak a lot and talk because I don't like her husband.
So I'm going to ask this next question with all due respect. Okay. Does your mother have mental health issues?
Okay, so diagnosed, I don't know. From the definition of Danielle D. Smith's book, yes. But I will say this as well. I hated my mother for years. Loved her, always loved her, and always respected her. Never disrespected her. But I was angry with her for years because I didn't understand how, when I moved with my father, I didn't hear from her for a year. Nobody knew where she was. She never tried to get me. She never tried to get me back or anything. Like, I didn't understand that. And even into my adulthood, I always had to help my mother. You know, she was on drugs and all this. And I was the mother, I felt like. So I hated her. I don't understand. Be a mom. Just be a mom. You know, I want to lay in your bosom. I want to, you know, just talk. We talk about women things. When I went through my divorce, my mom had been divorced 5 times. I think you could have told me something. You know what I mean? I went through that process by myself. And so I say that to say I had to eventually learn to forgive my mother, and the way that I was able to do it, I had to realize she's a woman first. And I had to think about how many relationships did I jack up? You know, how many, you know, horrible relationships was I in? You know, I have a 21-year-old, and there were not men that I, you know, she didn't see men coming in and out of the house or anything like that. And I was intentional about that, but I still made mistakes. And so when I looked at my mother and I said, you're a woman first, and you make mistakes. You're not God. You make mistakes. When I was able to look at her like that, I was able to forgive her. Okay. Because I had to think about that. Don't even think about the motherhood piece. Okay. And so I began to have empathy for her. Woman to woman.
Yeah.
And so when I took all those other equations out, now I have to get back to, oh, dang, she my mom. Because she's still a woman.
Girl, I'm still thinking about 4 years old. I'm a JD. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I just can't even get past 4 years old. And you walking down Creepies in Fairwood. And I saw that part in your book where you was running. And it seemed like I saw a lot of parts in your book where you always found yourself running. Yep. You're a kid. You're not even a teenager. You're not you're 4. Something is so wrong with that picture.
Yeah, just stop being a toddler.
Right. And so when I also look at the history of my mother, and I won't go too much into it because it's her story to tell.
Sure.
But my mom went through a lot. And so when I started learning things that she went through as a kid, I was like, well, dang. You know, my mom used to always say to me, I did the best I could. And I'll be like, no, you didn't. You know, I would have mad attitude with her. No, you didn't. You should have figured it out. You should have. You should have. You know, it was what I always said. And then, like I said, when I started going through the process of she's a woman first, I started realizing like, dang, her and I didn't have we have a strenuous relationship. My grandmother and my mom had a strenuous relationship. My grandmother and my great grandmother. I was like, oh, okay, so this is generational. Wow. So when I had my daughter at 2, I said, I need to go back and look at my history, because I don't want the same thing to happen with me and my daughter that happened with me and my mom.
Right. That's right.
So that's why I say when you start understanding your past, you can understand your future a lot better, and you can understand your present as well. So when I found out that my mom didn't have a relationship, my grandmother didn't, my great grandmother, I'm like, well, dang. You know, it's set up for, I'm supposedly set up for failure.
How old is your daughter now?
She's 21.
How was your relationship?
We're getting there. Because although she knows what has gone on with me, she knows my mom, she knows the issue, she knows my book, she knows all these things. You know, I spoke about the residue. And although I said no more, it stops here with me, that residue has put a hiccup in our relationship, and we're getting back there. And so it's a fight. And I'm like, girl, you got to fight with me, not against me.
Yeah.
Because you know, and you also know deliverance, and you also know generational curse. You know this stuff. So you got to fight with me.
So Lisa, I got to tap on you for a second. Like, do you hear more than just generational curses? I do too. It's way more than that. It's way more than that. As it may be.
I'm so glad she mentioned that though, because you know you have to start with something. And one of the things that we find is so important is to be able to look back and even ask questions. The number of people I talk to that won't even talk to their parents and their grandparents. Well, what kind of childhood did they have? What do you know about them? And they look at it, oh, I don't know. I never asked.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we got to start somewhere.
But is there a reason why they don't ask? I remember when I asked my mother, I was
For
probably
some people,
23 or 24, and I asked her, what was your pregnancy like with me? Honey, I got my head chopped off.
that happens with some people. There's no question about it.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah.
question about it.
Mhm.
But what we're talking about here, Danielle, I'm so glad you brought it up, is a pattern.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I don't know any of us probably in here that won't be able to find a pattern in our family lineage. I know I do. I see patterns.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's that's one of the things God has talked to me about and wants me to, I'm working on. And this is a
Mhm.
work in progress.
Right.
But I have seen some movement. So I'm so glad to hear that. And I just have to say, if I can interject this one point, I was taking a walk today and I was in the neighborhood and I heard a child crying, hysterical, little
Hmm.
girl.
Hmm.
I'm on the phone and I was like, okay, I've got to go see what's going on with this little girl. Well, she had got off the bus, went to her house.
Mhm.
Nobody's home and she
Hmm.
has no way of getting in. She's
Wow.
just hysterical.
Mm.
So I went over there ever so gingerly and talked to her. She's 7.
Mm.
She was having a fit. You're talking about a 4-year-old.
Mm.
And she was at her house.
Don't you know? I mean, I know we all know, but this is just like
I can't
these
even imagine.
babies. They out here by themselves,
Mhm.
and people snatching kids every single day.
Yeah.
When I going through this process, when I wrote my book, I had to, I talked to my cousins, I talked to my mom, I talked to different people to, I knew what I knew. I remember the thoughts and memories that I had, but I had to talk to them just to kind of piece a couple of things together. And I began to think, because at the time my daughter was 12, and I'm like, I didn't let her get on the bus until she was in the 8th grade.
Yeah,
I
I hear
took her
you.
to school and picked her
I
up
hear you.
every single day. And the one time she got on the bus, the one time she wasn't supposed to get on the bus.
Mhm.
And it was an after school program. They let her on thinking that, she said, oh, I want to go with my friend. No one checked anything,
Hmm.
Oh,
and they put
no.
her on the bus. I get to the school to pick her up and they're like, well, she got on the bus. She got on the what? And I'm
Right.
flipping.
Mm.
I mean, I'm hysterical and I'm like, I'm suing everybody. I'm killing everybody. Like, I mean, I'm going, I went off.
Yeah.
And then I go get my baby. And thankfully, I got in touch with an uncle. Thankfully, she was safe, right?
Yes. Yes.
Thankfully, family, got to her before I was able to get there and all that kind of stuff. But it triggered me to that time. Her walking by herself. And at that time, she was in
I'm
the
sure it did.
4th grade.
I'm sure.
4th grade. Now you older than me because you in the 4th grade, but still, like just like Tabby said, it's Tibby. I'm sorry, Tibby said there were things that I wasn't going to do. My baby wasn't getting on no bus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She was not walking nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want her walking to the doggone mailbox. I didn't want her walking anywhere because I had to walk.
At
And
4 years old.
At 4 years old.
Mm-mm.
And so when I began to think about my daughter at that time, like I said, she was 12 when I wrote the book, but still I was like, I mean, I wept many of times writing this book, thinking back on these things, that I had suppressed and some I didn't. Some of the people are like, how in the world do you remember these things at 4 years old? One, I bless God that I do remember the things so that I can tell the story to help someone else.
But sometimes it be so traumatic you don't forget.
That's right.
That's what I was going to say. Some people have the opposite. It's so traumatic that they suppress it. But it was the opposite for me.
Wow.
I think it's important what you said also, just realizing that you start looking at her as a woman, and the truth of the matter is you looked at her as a traumatized, unhealed woman.
Yeah.
Period.
That's true.
Because she went through a lot of trauma at a young age.
Her mother, the same thing. You're talking about trauma on top of trauma, on top of trauma, on top of trauma. And then you wonder why people are just doing some of the things that we do in order to find peace in places that aren't good for us.
Wow.
Exactly.
But it gives us temporary. It's just it's a facade, but it's temporary. And the other thing that happens that you kept talking about was this thing. There's something we call parental I can't think of the name of it, where it's reversed. All of a sudden the child is taking care of the person.
I see it all the time.
It is so prevalent right now until it's ridiculous. And I have a lot of those grown people that I counsel in my secular counseling that they really struggle in life. They really struggle. They don't have any balance in life. So you hit on different things, Danielle.
Ladies, we're going to go on the break. It's that time. But when we come back, I want to talk about, and you guys tell me your input if this is what you want to discuss. I want to talk about what we can do to help keep kids safe. Whether it is child abuse, child molestation, what can we do as a community? Actually, so a pastor sent me a text today and was like, I need to know how we can teach churches how to keep our members safe. Interesting. So we'll talk about that when we come right back.
Stay tuned for more jaw-dropping revelations and captivating stories. Industry on Blast will be right back, ready to uncover the secrets of the industry that will leave you speechless. Don't miss a moment. Thank you for listening to Industry on Blast. We'll be back shortly with more eye-opening discussions, incredible stories, and inspiring guests. Your journey into the depths of the industry continues soon.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Wow. Childhood abuse. 4 years old, walking 9 miles. That's unbelievable. That's just what do we do to keep these kids safe? What do we do to keep that 7-year-old safe, Lisa, that you just ran into? What do we do to keep toddlers safe from a public why a toddler is in the bathroom? I have no idea. But what do we do? What do we do as a community?
I think that we can't start too early in terms of teaching kids. I remember, coming up when families would say, well, she's not old enough to hear about that, or we need to wait till they get older to hear about that. But that is not the case today. I think the earlier, the better. You think, well, if you tell them this too soon, they're not going to be able to handle it. But they're handling all this stuff that they see every single day.
Right.
They're handling it. They're having to deal with it. So the best thing we can do, in my view, is to start early. Working on a program where we can go into the schools, in the elementary schools, and use the right language so that we don't trigger or make someone feel uncomfortable. But I think that early education is the best thing that we could do to make them understand. Because believe it or not, some of the stuff that we say kids can't understand, they're already handling.
That's what I was thinking.
It's us. It's horrendous to us, and we struggle with handling it because it's so horrendous and it's so bad. But these kids face that stuff every single day in the bathrooms, in the hall, at the school, on the playground. They're seeing it every day. So we have to devise a way to communicate in the schools, in the church, in the homes, in the communities, because we can't talk about this enough because it's so prevalent. I mean, and the kids are aware of this.
But just think about this, Tibby, as a 4-year-old child with the woman that saw her walk into school, what would you have done? She's 4. And the lady said, I've seen you walk by here every day. What do you do?
The person that I am, After
know what
seeing
you
her
would have
one
done.
day, after
Yeah.
seeing a pattern of that, I probably would have had some authorities
Come on.
waiting.
Period.
You let me see
Period.
that more than one day, and she's walking, she's for you. I'm calling somebody.
Somebody.
And I'm telling somebody, you see what's going on here, and you know, and then they hit the wall. Because the problem is we don't want to speak on things. People don't want to get involved. People don't want to, you know, let somebody know they know about these kind of things, and people don't want to speak up and tell the truth. And the truth is the only thing that's going to get this thing right.
So, Charlotte, let me ask you this question. As someone, you are someone that endeavors to work in your community.
Yes.
What would you do? You see this 4-year-old kid walking day by day, every single day. You see this little girl walking by herself. What would you do in your community? Because Tippy's right. A lot of people don't want to get involved because, you know, it could be dangerous. It could. I mean, there's a lot of repercussions that could happen. Go ahead.
Yeah. It could be, but for me, I'm a mandated reporter.
Yeah,
So
no. Yep.
I would have to report it. I would do as much investigating as I could to, you know, to find out who the parents are, what the circumstances are, about, you know, educate about the dangers and all of that. But at the end of the day, I'm a mandated reporter.
At the end of the day.
And I would
So
have
who do you call? Who you call? Do you call the police? Do you call children's services? Who do you call?
I'm mandated to call children's services if I see the danger or it's a harmful situation. I will call the police first.
Okay. Okay.
Now let me add this too, because I know you guys have had enough shock value, but I'll add this as well. My mom told me about stranger danger. My mom told me, don't talk to nobody on the way. Don't, you know, you keep straight. You keep straight. You keep your eyes straight. You don't talk to nobody because you might see somebody. Like, she taught me literally the words of stranger danger and the meaning of it. You know, not realizing until I was older that the danger was in my home. It was in my home. But I say that to say, it still goes along with, you know, everything that we've talked about. You don't say anything that goes on in this house, you know, and all this kind of stuff, but I was taught that. I was taught stranger danger. So now let's put it into, I'm going to my babysitter, because I remember I was a babysitter, not at school. I'm not even in school yet. So I'm going to my babysitter's house. Now, let's say, for instance, my babysitter then tells me about stranger danger. Okay, let's put it in the perspective of what you just said. Now, let's say we go to the schools and we teach these children about stranger danger. Well, my mama taught me about stranger danger too. So aren't you technically a stranger?
Wow.
So it's that combat. It's that combat. You know what I'm saying?
This is I just really think that there's something has to change. I don't have an answer. Yeah. Say it again.
It has to, because the issue is not totally just stranger danger. The issue is, it is an inappropriate thing. It is something that puts you in harm's way. You can be taught all you want about stranger danger at the age of 4. Who you going to overpower and keep them from
at 4 years old
or doing something to you? You don't have the strength, the know-how, the skill, anything. Somebody could say, shut your mouth or I'm going to kill you, and grab you by your throat or clothes or jacket and put you in a car, anything. You can know. I don't care what you know. I don't care if you're 4 years old with a black belt.
You're 4.
Right.
You're 4.
Exactly. You don't have the capacity to protect yourself.
Right.
So for me, that's the issue.
I recall
you are in harm's way.
I recall when COVID, you know, first happened and the world shut down. And they started maybe 2 months after, maybe a month or two after the world shut down, trying to figure out how to feed the children
right
at home. I cried for days because I remembered how that was the only time that I got to eat was when I was at school. and how abuse increased during COVID because they're at home.
Yes.
They have nowhere to go.
Sure did.
That's right.
And I mean, COVID for me, my heart was so heavy during that time, just thinking about those that are going through domestic violence, but also those that the babies, it can't go nowhere. They couldn't go anywhere. And so my daughter's like, oh, okay, so you about to get that bus and start finding kids to just take and pick up, and I'm like, yeah, that's literally what I wanted to do.
And
that's
what it's going to take.
Yeah. And that was my point. That's literally what it's going to take. And, because it is a brainwashing that we go through. I honestly can say that. I know the brainwashing that happened with my mom, and I know where it was with my dad. Even, my dad talked about my mom all the time. I was confused. I love my mom because she birthed me. Even though my mama didn't want me, I still wanted her, and I didn't understand why she didn't want me. And I, it was so confusing. So I still wanted her, but
sure,
the brainwashing that went on between my parents with me is what is the main conversation. And my point of saying that is just, when we want to go in and we want to save the world, we want to save these children, we want to save the people. But what, just like Harriet Tubman couldn't save them all, right? They could see that they were in the danger, but they couldn't,
Yeah.
I knew I was in danger. I knew I was in danger. But I didn't want to say nothing because that's my mama.
Because that's your mom. So it's so interesting. I was a foster parent, and I had a foster child who was 14 at the time. And one day we were going to church. She was in the back seat. And she just bust out crying. I'm like, why is she crying? And somebody in the front seat said she's talking to her mother. And so I snatched the phone from her and I said, what did you say to her? She said, I don't know why this girl keep calling me. She know I don't want her. And I just thought, oh my God. Now the mother done told her daughter, I don't want you. Wow. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Let me say this. We are here with Danielle D. Smith talking about Yesterday's Tomorrow. You can get that book on IamDanielleDSmith.com, which is at the bottom of our screen, or you can also go to Amazon.com. But I would say go to IamDanielleDSmith.com.
Because you will also see my documentary. So, I turned the book into a docudrama. It was very important to me to get the get the visual out there. Everyone doesn't read, so I was trying to think of different ways to get the message out there. And we acted out. That was one of the scenes that we acted out, was me walking to my babysitters. And it was so hard for me. I'm thankful that I finally did it because the film has done so much. But I was very timid, and the whole entire time I'm checking on the baby that was playing me, the little girl that was playing me. Are you okay? Are you safe? I prayed for that baby so much, because she was, reliving what I went through. I prayed for that baby so much during that time, because I didn't want anything to happen to her and backlash and, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so that I turned the book into a docudrama.
Danielle, tell us about Don't Be Quiet.
Don't Be Quiet is a movement that I started while I was writing the book. I felt like, once again, how else can I get the message out there, because everybody don't read, child. And so it was really about we're the voice for those that feel that they don't have a voice. For so long, I felt like I didn't have a voice. So for me, it was just helping me, right? Yes. I wanted to help people that were like me. At the time when I started my book, I was married. I knew what my purpose was. Had a conversation with my husband at the time. Hey, this is what's going to happen. We were in agreement about it. And 2 months after my book was released, he was like, you still talking about this? And I was like, yeah, like we had this discussion. And I had to make a choice. But during that process, I am the type of person where I like to research things. Okay. And a therapist friend of mine was talking about the different types of domestic violence. And that was when I learned about the different types. I had no clue. All I knew was about getting punched and hit. And, that was all I knew about. And so I was like, it's my mission to start telling people the different types of abuse so people can get out of it, because I was in an abusive marriage. And I went to my husband at the time and I was like, hey, we in an abusive marriage. Like, bruh, what are we going to do? And he was like, what are you talking about? And when I explained it to him, we tried therapy. I tried to make it work and it did not. And I had to go on. I chose my purpose. My purpose saved my life, though. My purpose saved my life, because if I had not done that research, I would not have known the marriage I was in and where would I be,
wow.
And so forth. So, that's why I always say you don't have to speak like I speak. This is my purpose. You don't have to speak on these grand stages. This is my purpose. Tell me in my ear, baby, and I'll help you. Tell me in my ear and I got you.
Yeah. So tonight we're talking to Danielle D. Smith. You can go to her website at I am Danielle D. Smith. Anyone in the anyone in the audience on Facebook or YouTube, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'll get to your questions. We only got about 15 more minutes here, so drop those questions in the chat and we'll get to your questions. I want to thank Marion and Brenda and Lawrence and I'm trying to see the ones who've already been in the chat. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I can't see everybody. I see the numbers, but I can't see everybody. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Again, if you have any questions for anyone on the stage, go ahead and drop that in the chat. So Danielle, I saw one more thing in your book. Let me get your book back out. This was about your dad. So it seemed like, well, I'm assuming this is you, okay? Because you changed these names. Is that correct?
So yeah, I did change the names. Alex is me. I changed the names. I wasn't trying to help nobody's identity or nothing. I changed it as an activity with my daughter, period. That's it. Okay. Me and my daughter helped me name everybody. That was something to make her feel like she was included. She was, like I said, she was 12 when I wrote it. But I didn't care about changing the names for that. I wasn't trying to hide nothing.
You weren't trying to protect.
No. So it might not be my dad, because I don't know. I don't know if I used my dad's. I can't even remember.
You didn't use your dad. I'm just thinking of the scenario. So okay. let me ask you this. So your dad, your father seemed like he was somewhat of a decent provider, but he was still somewhat of a tormentor to you. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So yeah, my dad retired from AEP. He worked there all my life. And I have two other siblings that by his first wife, my mom is his second wife. He's now still married to his third wife, who has 3 children. This is important because I have 2 older siblings, me, and then I have 3 step siblings. Okay. That are actually older than me. Everyone is older than me. I say that because my father told me in 2016 that he didn't want children. He didn't want none of us. Wow. You did it 3 times. And then you married someone that had 3. Wow. And then you did foster care for years. I had no empathy. I was angry again because
understandable.
You did this multiple times. You chose to take care of children.
Wow. Understandable. And so as you got older, what age were you when the abuse stopped?
Okay, so then you must be talking about my mom's boyfriend.
Oh, was that okay? Yeah. Okay.
No, and that's okay. My dad verbally abused me. So there is still abuse. My dad verbally abused me, but as far as physical, that was my mom's boyfriend, and that ended when I left my mom at 4. And he was never charged. And I will say, because of who he knows, he was never charged. My mom was, but he was not.
I just cannot. Your mom was charged, but he was not?
Because his family was political here.
Oh wow.
Yep. So he did not get
So
not one
that
charge.
adds another layer onto the case. Like, what do we do when the perpetrators are political, have power, have influence, know who's, you know what I mean? They in the who's who, and nothing happens. And so that, to me, that's another thing that makes children say, I can't, I'm not telling nothing.
Not telling.
I'm not telling. I'm not telling. Thank you for joining us, Keisha. I hope you feel better. Keisha said, I'm sad to hear this, but she's not surprised.
Mm.
So now we're talking about a system that needs to change.
Yep.
Not just the family, but a system that needs to change. Lisa, what you thinking about?
My mind is going back to, you said you had spoke with the pastor and he said, what can we do? I think that
What
needs
can
to
we
be
do?
answered.
That's the question.
I think that's a very important question. And one of the things that we know about our communities is that the churches have influence.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not speaking about these topics in the churches on a Sunday morning, we have to start with talking about these issues.
And think about the political people that go into these churches.
So if your friend or whoever it is that you're talking to is not having a conversation about abuse, let alone sexual abuse, child abuse, neglect, if we're not having those kind of conversations, then it's not on the radar.
You know what, Lisa, what I determined today, and this might sound really bad for me to say this, I'm hopeful that God is going to turn things around. But the reality of it is, so I heard about several more pastors that's getting ready to be charged with sexual abuse. One of my dear friends, I don't keep up with that stuff unless it's, a traffic victim involved. When I tell you, she took me on Google and we went through the pastors from a church that I'm very familiar with. And we counted the pastors that's in prison right now for sexual assault or sexual abuse of a kid. That's in prison, right? I couldn't believe it. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought, this is why y'all don't want to talk about it, because y'all doing it.
Mm-hmm. Y'all doing
I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. This is exactly why we're not talking about these issues.
Or your organizational leader is doing it.
One of the reasons, but the other reason is that people don't want to hear about it either. Oh, you can't talk about that. It's Sunday morning. I don't want to hear about that. I mean, think about it. The scripture says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. But the B scripture says, because they rejected it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you rejected it. It's interesting because I think who was saying, I was talking to Jessica, who's not with us tonight, and she was saying how R.A. Vernon in Cleveland, he's a pastor in Cleveland, Ohio. He has decided that he's just going to read the Bible. No more motivational messages. No more. He is literally on. You can look on YouTube on Sunday morning. He's literally reading the Bible.
Are people showing up?
Packed. Okay.
That's crazy.
But crazy. No, this is the thing. To me, maybe you get the word of God in them and to bring forth some change, because the reality of it is most of them is just a good motivational speaker. And people go to church, they get their motivation, and then they come back the next Sunday like it's a drug and get their next hit of motivation. No. Maybe get this word of God in you, and you can be transformed by the renewal of your mind through the word of God. Because something got to change.
Amen.
Oh, my goodness, lady, we got 5 minutes. Any final remarks?
I guess it's hard to talk about any of this without talking about mental health, because
it sounds like it's all mental health.
All this bizarre and different kind of behavior comes from somewhere else, and that's another thing in the Black community. There's such a stigma, is people think if you have some mental health that it's has something to do with whether you're smart or you're this or you're that. And the fact of the matter, it can happen to anyone, anybody can be affected by
Yeah.
the trauma that goes with mental health. And so you wouldn't do that if you had cancer. You go get chemo,
Come on.
But
Come
when
on.
it talks to if your leg is broke, you're going to get a splint. You're going to go find out what you need to do. I mean, expeditiously, you're going to do it right away, But when it comes to mental health, especially in the Black community, I've had conversations with Black men, and you talk about mental health.
Oh,
Woo,
we've seen
baby,
it.
they will shut you down. Don't want to talk about it, won't address it. Know that something's going on with them that's not right, and they still will not address it because they take it personal. That means I'm not smart. It means like this. It means that. And it
Like
means
they're
what it
broken.
is. Yes.
Like they're
And the
broken.
fact of the matter is, you are. We all
Sandra
are.
said in the chat that men need to be charged who are doing these kind of things. She was talking about your case, Danielle. And then Keisha said, the pastor I went to told me to use better discernment and completely disregarded that my child had been abused. Girl.
Put the blame back on you. Oh, okay.
Well, that's okay. That's what they do. But let's try to before we take these last 4 minutes, let's try to answer the pastor's question. What can we do?
Oh, I definitely say let us in your doors.
Hey.
Let us in your doors. Let us in your doors to have this conversation, not just one time, multiple times. Let us have support groups.
That's good.
Let us come in and totally have the conversation on a Sunday, but not always on Sunday. Not always on Sunday, on other days as well. And make your doors, your actual building, a safe haven.
Yeah. So Sandra said men need to change. They need to get back to being protectors of women and children. Yeah, that's very true. What can we do? Or where are the good men that control their urges and present them to the Lord, to the Father? Well,
less and less.
What are we going to do? What is that answer? What can the church do, Charlotte?
I think we need to educate, because a lot of the problem has to do with this is normal behavior to them. It's been repeated, the behavior, those notions that it's okay to do this and do that. It's been repeated generation after generation after generation. So the behavior has become normal to them. And people who do things that are out of the ordinary, but they're normal to them, they're going to keep doing it until it's interrupted. So it has to be interrupted. They have to be retaught what is normal, what is right, what God wants, how our lives should be. They have to learn that the things that they have ascribed to are detrimental, they're harmful, and even though they become normal and routine, they are not.
Tibby, what can we do?
I think the cycles, breaking cycles of how men think, because you can remember from back in the day when they talk about the good old buddy club and
the good old boys club.
Good old boys club. They let so many things be acceptable that really shouldn't be.
Never.
And that's a mindset. That's a mindset. And so we're talking about deliverance of mindsets to understand, because people know what's right and wrong. People know what's right and wrong. But those mindsets have been deemed acceptable in society. Society lets men say, this is okay. And all the way from women getting paid less, all the way, it trickles all the way down, that they have more authority, that they are, this is okay. And so training, just like Charlotte said, training and education in the church from the bishop on down, they need to train be trained, because even they have mindsets too that say it's okay for men to do this. Well, we can get we can do that because we're just men. And if a woman does that, we're out of place. We're out of line. They're quick to check us, but they won't go back and see what the word of God says. You need to honor us. And the whole thing with honor has gone out the window.
Lisa, what can we do?
I think it really goes back to some of the basics and be the eyes and ears in your community. Be the eyes and ears for the little girl, the 4-year-old that's walking, the 7-year-old that's walking, the little boy that every time you turn around, something's going on. I remember that movie the first time I watched Antoine. And he's running.
What was the name of that movie?
What's the name of that? I can't think of the name
Antoine
of that
movie.
Antoine Fisher.
Yeah. He running down the street with the shirt on because he being molested by the babysitter in his home. So those are the types of things where we really do.
Dang, I don't think I watched that movie. He was molested by the babysitter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch that.
We have to really continue to just, even when I saw the little girl today, Marlene, I remember saying to her, well, do you know anybody? Do you know any of your neighbors? Oh no, I don't know any of those. It was like, oh no. So we're in our silos so much until we haven't reached out.
Yes.
I mean, I was always told, this is growing up, I was always told, if I'm not here, something happens, you go here, you go there, you go. There was a place to go.
Yes, absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely so.
Because things happen. I mean, emergencies happen. Anything can happen. You know, Danielle, you could be on your way to pick up your child and you get in an accident. So if something happens, what's the plan B? What's the contingency? So really, in terms of what can we do, we can go back to doing some things and being a community because we have become silos.
Yes. Yes. Danielle, what can we do?
Oh, I said it. They can open their doors to us. I meant that. Go and give me the schedule and I'll be there for real. Like, I've asked to come. I've asked a lot of churches and they have told me no. So please let me come. Let me talk about, the signs of abuse, how to report, what to look for, all that stuff. I'm cool, calm, and collected. I just want to teach. I just want to help.
I just want to get this one thing in. Sure. It's important for us as women who know about these things that we don't always go to the man that's the head. We might have to find another way, another road in. I mean, let's just be honest about it.
Good
so
point.
keep that in mind.
I talk to the gatekeepers and everything. So, and I would get so far, So yeah, let us in your doors. Let us in to have these conversations. You don't even have to conduct it.
Right.
Just open the door. Unlock the door. Unlock the door for us.
That's very, very true. Lisa, are you with us here next week or no?
No, I won't be here next week.
You will not be here next week. So next week, if Vanita or Jessica are here, or Keisha, we will talk about their books. And then the following week, Lisa will be talking about her book. They Don't Tell. I was great. Say Kids Don't Tell. They Don't Tell, Sexual Abuse from a Mother's Perspective. And I wanted to bring that up because if you are a mother and your child has been sexually abused, you don't want to miss that episode. So if you are a mother and your child has been sexually abused, I can only imagine the guilt, the shame, the condemnation, all of the feelings and emotions you probably have felt at one time or another because you felt like you didn't protect your child. But I'm going to tell you, like I've told many, you're not omniscient. You're not God. You can't be every place at the same time. So, but you definitely don't want to miss that episode. And if we don't have the speakers here on next week, I'll talk about my book. Pimped on Both Sides is a very interesting book. Being pimped in the streets and pimped in the church. So, we'll talk about that. So again, I'd like to thank you all tonight for joining us for Legacy of Lies. Again, if you want to get Danielle's book, you can go to I Am Danielle Smith. I'm Danielle D. Smith. I had to remember that D, girl, because that D done wore me out. Not putting it in there, honey. I done missed that website, okay?
Listen.
I am DanielleDSmith.com. You can get her book, Yesterday's Tomorrow, or you can get that on Amazon.com. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight, ladies. And we are going to end this broadcast. Hold on. There you go.
That concludes another mind-blowing episode of Industry on Blast. Thank you for joining us on this riveting exploration of the industry secrets. Be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode as we continue to unveil the truth. Visit our website at www.blastnetwork.com to catch up on previous episodes and stay connected. If you have a story to share or are interested in becoming a sponsor or guest, we want to hear from you. Together, we can ignite change and create a world free from the shadows. This is Industry on Blast, signing off. Keep shining a light on the truth.